I got my hands on a pretty cool controller called Crush, made by companies whose name I've never heard before or seen their products. However, I took my time and looked them up, discovering that they make neat Switch controllers, and also Android controllers as well. The reason I have this early review of this controller is that they asked me if I wanted to check it out. Of course, I said yes. After replying to their email, I slammed down my orange juice in excitement. In the next couple of weeks, the controller arrived. Before we dive farther into this review, there are a couple of things I want to address first. This is a Kickstarter project, and it will be released sometime at the end of November. This video is coming out a bit before the Kickstarter is launched, since they're sending out the controllers to a few creators for feedback. Sadly, this is not a paid sponsorship. I was fortunately enough to receive one myself. With that being said, let's get into this review. I have to say, this controller reminds me a lot of a PS4 or PS5 controller, especially in the way that it lacks lines and it's smooth all the way around. Moving on, let's focus on the joysticks. These are Halo Effect joysticks. The cool part about Halo Effect joysticks is that they can never get stick drift compared to their analog brothers. I find this especially cool since Nintendo has a notorious problem with stick drift in their Joy-Cons. The joysticks are also removable, allowing you to customize them with different layouts. I think this is a neat idea. I believe the Elite Series controllers have the best version of this so far, but of course that is patented by Microsoft. They got around it by using clips. If you want to remove your joysticks, you have to remove the front case. Leading us to the second feature. You can have different front cases, almost like the Fusion Pro controller. I have been preferring the white one in most of my gaming sessions because it's a little lighter. The one included with my early build of this controller was a full metal one. Definitely pretty neat, but a little heavy. The case are held in by magnets similar to the Fusion Pro. Now, let's talk about the buttons. They feel a little mushy. They don't feel like a first-party controller, but they also don't feel like a awful third-party controller either. They're somewhere in the middle. I don't mind the A, B, Y, and X keys as much as the D-pad. Something about the D-pad isn't right. Maybe it's because of how soft it is, or maybe I'm used to using the Elite Series, but it definitely feels off. Looking at the front triggers, they're pretty nice. They feel like a generic Xbox controller, but the bottom triggers are something different. I really like these. Maybe they remind me a lot of the Xbox 360 or a PS4 controller. I honestly dig the bottom triggers, and I think it might have something to do with the Halo Effect triggers. They feel really nice and provide plenty of feedback when you're pushing them down. Since we already are looking at the front side of the controller, let's talk about the pairing button. It's on the left hand side and it works well. I got it to pair with my PC using the Bluetooth and my Nintendo Switch without a problem. In the middle, there's a USB Type-C port to charge the battery inside. I'm still waiting for confirmation of how long the controller will last, but I do know how big the battery is. It is a 865 milliamp battery, probably gonna have like 6 to maybe 40 hours of playtime. I don't know, still waiting for confirmation, and when I do receive it, I will put it here. If you look over here to the left, there are two different modes, an Xbox mode and a Switch mode. I'm pretty sure the Xbox mode is for connecting to Android, Windows, and Steam, because most of them recognize an Xbox controller and its layout, while the Nintendo Switch mode is just for the Switch. Overall, it was able to connect to everything just fine, and I didn't mind it as a wireless controller. One other thing I didn't want to gloss over is that the buttons light up. I think it's a pretty cool feature. There's no practical purpose for it, but it's definitely cool. You also have a big bright light bar on the rear of the controller, just like a PS5 or PS4. And if you pull down the left button trigger, it will brighten. I'm not sure why they went with this, but it's alright. You can also change the colors of the light bar by holding the T button on the top right and moving the left joystick around. It will change the color of the light bar. The last feature of the controller is it has a turbo function. The turbo function function is essentially rapid fire mode for any button. It works quite well. All you have to do is hit the T on the right and click whatever button you want to have the turbo function. That being said, let's move on to my overall opinion of this controller. I have to say, this controller works pretty well. I was kind of surprised by how the joysticks felt. I've never experienced halo effect joysticks before, but I definitely like these. I know the reason why most companies don't use them is that no one knows how long they last. The controller feels pretty good in your hands. I don't mind how smooth it is, but I think your hands might get a little slippery over time because there's no grip to the sides of the controller at all. So I could see this controller slipping out of your hands. The build quality around is decent. Again, the D-pad was the only thing I had an issue with, but that's just a minor thing. The buttons feel great during my gaming session, and it works fine as a wireless controller. I wasn't able to feel any sort of delay across the Switch and PC, and I think the RGB was a nice touch to the controller as well. And we can't forget the halo effect triggers as well. I absolutely love these. I think this should be a mainstay on more controllers, but not enough companies want to put the funding into something like that. Another thing I would love to see is more customization parts for this controller. I'm hoping this Kickstarter goes well because I'm looking forward to whatever they bring to the market, especially taller joysticks. I would definitely use this controller for my daily if they were able to bring something like that to the market. I know I could just put control freaks on it, but it's just not the same feeling if it's not made by the company itself. My final thoughts about this controller are that it's in a pretty decent state where it's at. There's definitely some fine tuning to do, but I think where it's at is a lovely place to be. Everything works well, everything looks good, and it feels like a quality controller. I 100% recommend checking out their Kickstarter, and hopefully they get the backing they need to produce a good run of these controllers. But I'm gonna leave it there. Feel free to check out the rest of my videos on my channel, and have a good one.